The NFL draft is just a couple of weeks away, so it's time for my final prospect rankings for the 2022 NFL draft class. And we're going to start with the strongest class being the edge rushers. And I'm going to give you 15 guys because, well, this is a very good class. Now, there won't be any highlights in this video because guess what? I get hit with copyright claimed. It just happens. I'm not trying to have this video be demonetized. I don't know how other guys do it without getting hit with it. It is what it is. Obviously, you can check out my full rankings and big board at my Patreon. Check that out in the description below. But what's crack-a-lackin'? It's your boy Baroshmo. Just in case you did not know so, go ahead, become a bro and subscribe. Leave this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed the content. And without further ado, let's get into it. F15, I got Myjah Sanders out of Cincinnati, as he's had one of the strangest offseason draft processes of any prospect this year. As the Senior Bowl was fine, he showed, hey, he's a good run defender, but kind of wished for, he didn't really shine as some of the other pass rushers did there at the Senior Bowl. And then he proceeded to go to the combine with a stomach bug, weighing at 227. Didn't test out great. And then go to his pro day. It's like, okay, 247, and then decided not to do any of those drills. So, bit of head scratcher there. But he has a long frame, and he's got a very explosive first step. However, how he uses his hands is a bit of a question mark to me. He kind of looks like one of those inflatable arm waving tube guys as a pass rusher. He just needs to use his hands better after initial contact. And he does seem a bit stiff, but overall, I like what he can bring to the table because he does a good job of turning speed into power. And like I said at the beginning, he's one of the better run defenders in this class. He had a relatively quiet year this season until just turning it on against Tulane in week 9, and ended the year pretty solid. 62 pressures, 5 sacks. You do kind of worry about it because it's against lesser competition. Him being kind of him being a senior, you do worry. It's like you should have really produced against this lesser competition. But you could go back to the Georgia game in 2020 where he had 4 pressures and 1 sack. It's like, yeah, he can contend against top competition. It's just, why wasn't it as consistent in his final season? Which is a fair question to have. Now, this guy, I talked about him being a good run defender. Well, he doesn't finish plays too well. 25% missed tackle rate. You kind of worry about that. Overall, there's just too many questions when it comes to Sanders for me to really put him high on my list. He does feel maybe a bit more of a developmental guy, and it's why I have him at 101. At number 14, I got Josh Paschal out of Kentucky. This dude's an absolute unit. He's short, he's stocky, he loves using his leverage because he just gets under blockers' pads with relative ease. He could just drive them back. He's powerful. He's strong. The biggest knock on him is going to be the lack of length and explosiveness, which is why you're not going to see this guy probably be highly valued in the first couple of rounds. But this dude is good. He's going to be a solid NFL player. He had one hell of a game against Florida. 38 pressures and 6 sacks to end the year. He's a phenomenal run defender, just powerful, shaves off blocks with relative ease, great motor, 41 defensive stops on the year. But he is a bit of a tweener in terms of his skill set and his size. I think he's got the versatility to play in any scheme, which I think will make him very coveted by any NFL team. It's just he doesn't have those high-end traits, which is why he's here at 88 on my big board. At number 13, I have Cameron Thomas out of San Diego State. He is the Mountain West Aiden Hutchinson. At least that's what a lot of people peg him. And actually, this is one of my favorite comps. I gave him Matt Roth as former Iowa and Dolphins player, and I see a lot of similarities in their game. Now, started his young career there as an Aztec. He was used as an interior player primarily at 260. But in 2019, he had 40 pressures, 6 sacks, and then as he was used more throughout the defensive line, 2020, he turned that into 37 pressures, 5 sacks, and then just had absurd production this past year. So much so he was the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year. 77 pressures, 12 sacks. Utterly amazing. Now, he isn't the same type of athlete as Aiden Hutchinson, but their power is very similar. He's a pretty decent first step, and he's really good at controlling the line of scrimmage. I think he's more of an edge setter than an actual edge rusher, but he does have a very deadly push-pull move, which you could say the same thing about Aiden Hutchinson, but we'll get to him when we get to him. This guy does have a full toolbox of inside pass rush moves. You love the versatility along the line, high motor. It's just a guy you want to have on your football team. But the lack of length, the lack of bend, he is a bit of a tweener. As coming into the Senior Bowl, we thought he'd be weighing around 270, 275. Came in at 264, I believe, before weighing in at 265 at the Combine. And the lower body strength isn't nearly as good as you'd expect for a guy you expect to be more versatile. But listen, the versatility is very tantalizing. And yes, the competition was a bit lower, but I think his skill set's unique enough to make him a day 2 target. At number 12, I have Sam Williams out of Ole Miss, and he's actually one of my favorite prospects in this class. It's just there are some red flags when it comes to Williams. He had a dropped sexual assault charge back in 2020, which it's kind of a big red flag. It did end up being dropped, but still, it's kind of a character red flag there. This dude enjoyed a big breakout season this past year where he had 61 pressures, 13 sacks. He's got a good frame. He has a non-stop motor. This dude just doesn't give up on plays. He's got violent hands. His first step was very improved. Looked good and explosive this year. I love how he dips and rips. When he gets stuck on contact, he does a good job. He has this fierce uppercut to kind of clean his strike zone. By strike zone, I just mean, blockers getting under their pads or into their chest. But he does look a bit clunky when trying to rattle through moves, combos, counters. Instead of being more fluent, it does seem like a process. It feels like he's going through photosynthesis at some times. That's how long it feels like it takes. He is in the run game. He just misses tackles. He's an arm tackler and he's not that good of one. It is what it is. But I like the nasty swing move from Williams here. Double teams, he's basically dead in the water. So, listen, the physical tools are very, very tantalizing. It's just, again, with the big red flag of being that dropped assault charge, and just the inconsistencies on tape, because he can run a bit hot and cold. I feel more mid-day 2 rather than talking about this guy probably at the back end of the first round. And I think that's what really hurts him. At number 11, I got my boy Kingsley Enagbare out of South Carolina. I know y'all going to look at that comp and be like, Clelin Ferrell, that's terrible. But listen, I got him here at 65 on my big board rather than being the Raiders and taking him 4th overall. Kind of a big difference. And I think Ferrell's become a pretty decent football player. And plus, when it comes to these comps, they're not verbatim comps. It's like maybe in terms of play style, measurements, production. That's kind of what it is. So don't get so caught up on the comps, because I know some of y'all will. They're really just for fun. But I love Enagbare because this guy has produced so well in the SEC, kind of in spite of just not being a very technical or a very refined football player. When it comes to technique, throw it out the window. This guy is, for all intents and purposes, a bull in a china shop. I love that characterization because there's always going to be that guy in the class that fits it. And unfortunately, it's one of my favorite prospects in that regard. But how he's won in the SEC has been through violence. You can't teach players just to be violent. They either are or they aren't. And this guy has some of the heavy, meanest hands in this class. He combines his length there with almost 35-inch arms, uses great leverage, probably has some of the best bull rushes you'll see on tape of any other prospect. He plays with a high motor, a big tank. One of my favorite prospects in this class. He just doesn't have the ideal juice. He's not a bendy guy. He lacks that initial quick first step. And that's what really keeps him from being among the top of this class. As y'all, if you're familiar with the channel, you know I was exceptionally high on him going into the season and just really didn't come off him until probably about 3/4 through the season. I mean, it's a deep edge class. It was just a matter of time before other guys ended up passing him by. But when it comes to the NFL, you're gonna question, can this guy win despite not being very polished? That's gonna be the $1 million question. Probably a reason why he falls to late second round, maybe early third round. I think really mid day 2 is where we're going to see this guy come off the board. Hey, we're going to be live streaming the draft. If he comes off the board any earlier, I'll lose my mind. I'm going to have a hell of a time. So be there for that. Get into the top 10. I got Nik Bonitto out of Oklahoma. Biggest thing with him is going to be play strength and power. He has none. This guy is a finesse pass rusher through and through. I was surprised that he was able to get up to 248. I don't think he's going to be able to put too much more meat on his frame. I just think that's going to be the case. He's a very interesting prospect because he's not going to be for every scheme. He's going to be a very scheme-dependent, role-dependent type of guy when it comes to the NFL. And depending on your team and what you run, he's either going to come off early second round or maybe in that mid day 2 area. That's why I have him here at 56. I really think he's a top 50 prospect. It's just he's so particular in what he can do for a team that it's just not going to be for everybody. The thing he does have going for him is in terms of coverage, this guy's the most experienced in this class among the edge. He has 263 snaps in coverage under his belt, where he's only allowed 16 receptions for 149 yards with an interception and 2 pass breakups. But this guy flies off the edge. He has some of the best get off you'll see. Like I said, he is a finesse pass rusher. He has a very, very large toolbox, very large lunch pail of pass rush moves that he could really put tackles or tight ends in a blender if he so chooses. It's just, this guy's, he's never going to hit you with the bull rush. That's really what it is at the end of the day. But he's been so productive throughout his career. Over the last 3 seasons, 116 pressures, 18 sacks. But it's really going to come to, or at the end of the day, it's just he's not going to be for every scheme. And that's probably what's going to end up hurting him. I really do see him coming off the board late second, early third. At number 9, I have Drake Jackson out of USC, another one of my favorite prospects in this class, because this cat is kind of the J.R. Smith, if you will, of these NFL draft prospects, as he can be a bit streaky. It's just this guy's high-end reps, his high-end plays are on par with the best of this class. This cat has just an extraordinary combination of length, explosiveness, and bend. It's just the inconsistencies. That was the biggest question coming in to this year, that he's such a hot, cold player. He just is, and he doesn't offer too much in terms of playing against the run, because he for as loosey goosey as he is, he's very hard to get a hand on. He just isn't active in the run game. That's just not his thing, which is a bit strange, because this cat came into the combine weighing 254 and then came into his pro day 273, because another thing is turning speed to power. That's not his thing. His lower body straight's a big question mark, but getting up to that 273, you got to wonder, is that something he's going to be improving upon in the NFL? Because he still came in with a solid 3-cone, which I thought was pretty impressive. And his Vernon Broad numbers were pretty darn good. They just are. You love this dude's movement skills. This guy in space is just wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And when it comes to the consistency question marks and will he play with a hot motor, I think he was on his way to having one hell of a year before injury, and then just the whole USC coaching change. Just things didn't really align right for Drake Jackson. I think this is a cat that is just scratching the surface, because he has tools. He has tools. So I think if he goes to a team that's willing to develop him, we could see him in another 2 years with elite potential. So I'm a big fan of Drake Jackson and why I have him in my top 50. At number 8, I got Arnold Ebiketie out of Penn State, and I'm just so happy with this guy, because coming into the year, he made my sleepers list. I was like, because I'm a sucker for guys that come from lower competition, and they're like, nah, let's raise the bar. Because he was very good at Temple in 2020. He had 22 pressures, 4 sacks, but his pass rush win rate was 25.4. That was 6th best in 2020. And then he came out and had a hell of a year for Penn State, finishing the season with 52 pressures and 8 sacks. He was undersized coming into the year, but he put on 15 pounds and he looked pretty darn good doing it. The dude tested out way more explosive than he probably looks on tape. And I think a lot of that is just with the technique of his first step. Because a lot of it, I think a lot of it's not so much he jets, but it's really a step and go. So he can work. That's really just, it's a very simple adjustment. Like, we know this guy can be explosive based on how he tested out. So, it's really just something he needs to fine tune, and it's something that's not that hard to do. When it comes to him as a pass rusher, he really does. His approach to the pass rush, I think, is extraordinary, because he is not a guy that really showcases a lot of pass rush moves. But in terms of combos and counters, it's literally like a tree. He's got this pass rush move, and then it just branches out into all the different things he can do from there. And I think it speaks volumes, because if you look at it, a large percentage of his pressures and sacks came within 1 to 2 seconds of the snap. That's among the best in this class. And I feel terrible putting him here at 42, because I really think if he sneaks into the end of the first round, I'm not going to bat an eye at that. I'd be like, well, yeah, that's about right. I really, really think he should be higher on my list, but he ends up falling here at 42. You like the length, power and play strength. It's average. It is what it is. That's just the case. And there will be questions to back in his Temple days. Why did he struggle to find playing time? Why was it so hard for them to put him on the field? But based on how he played at Penn State this past year, I think that's more of an indictment on Temple than it is on Ebiketie. I'm a huge fan of this cat's game, and it's just his production this past year. It's just too hard to ignore. This guy's going to be a good football player. And at number 7, David Ojabo out of Michigan, and he would have probably been a first-round prospect if not for the Achilles rupture he had on his pro day. On top of that, he is coming in with a small sample size because let's do a little background. Let's do a little context. Young David was born in Nigeria and then moved to Scotland. And then at the age of 7. And then he moved to the U.S. and started playing football his junior year of high school, where his teammate was our boy Odafe Oweh. That's pretty cool. And then he goes to Michigan. And he's on the practice squad, and he actually gets practice squad player of the year his freshman season. Sophomore year, he only saw 26 snaps. And then coming into this year, wasn't even a starter, didn't really have his breakout game until week 5 against, I believe it was Indiana. Not positive. Don't quote me on that. And then he became it was actually Wisconsin. It was against Wisconsin. But he became a starter the previous week. This guy had a hell of a season for not really holding down, not really getting the starting position until week 6. 42 pressures, 11 sacks. You love to see it. You just love to see it. He's again, you love seeing these guys that come out of nowhere and just emerge as these high-end draft prospects. That's kind of what you live for if you're a draft analyst or just someone who just loves the NFL draft. Now, he's got a winning combination of bend and explosiveness, and I would say his approach to the pass rush, or his pass rush game plan, if you will, and his hand counters are far ahead than you would expect for a guy that has such a small sample size. Because keep in mind, he didn't really see significant snaps until week 6, week 5, but that was the breakout. So that tells me the learning curve for him, it's not going to be all that bad. He wasn't used a lot against the run. He just wasn't. Like, his physicality, it could stand to get a bit better. Michigan didn't like keeping him on the field against the run. That's why we didn't really see him in the Georgia game, because we kind of know what Georgia's about. They have 4 really good running backs there, and they had to feed all of them. But if you're taking this guy, it's because of that immense upside that he offers. It really is, and probably would have been. You're drafting this guy based on what you think he can be, not necessarily what he is right now. And with him having to redshirt his rookie year, I think we will see him go probably early to mid second. It's really unfortunate, but it kind of is what it is. I see his role, at least early on, being this designated pass rush only, or being a rush linebacker. And yeah, I actually like the comp that I give him, Nwosu. You let me know other fun comps for Ojabo, because I think there's a few good ones out there. So yeah, let me know in the comment section below. At number 6, I got Boye Mafe out of Minnesota. And he made Bruce Feldman's Freaks list for good reason, because he's stupid explosive. 41.5-inch vert. That's utterly ridiculous. Now, it's fair to say if a lot of y'all think, oh, he's this very unpolished, raw prospect. Because if you go back to that opener against Ohio State, that's kind of what he was. This is a guy that I wouldn't say struggled to see playing time, but just he was this rotation player, this part-time player for Minnesota. But he was a vastly different prospect by the end of the year. He was while he by no means this very technical, refined pass rusher, he was a lot more polished by the end of the year. And I think that was best showcased during the Senior Bowl, which in the game, he had 8 pressures and 2 sacks. That's bonkers. That is just a bonkers. But a lot of how he wins as a pass rusher A lot of it is just I'm super athletic and I'm just going to jet by this guy. Now, he's gotten a bit better since then, but I think it stands to question. For a guy at his age, he will turn 24, like I think halfway through his first NFL season. He's a bit more raw than you would like at that age. But just the athletic traits, they're just salivated. Like, I just don't think you can pass up on something like that. This guy has pop, he has strength. I like it. I think as a run defender, he can be more active with his hands rather than trying to lock up and drive and actually try to break free. Throw an uppercut, throw a swipe, get a little herky-jerky with the guy. So there is that, but again, a lot of this guy is just explosiveness, upside. You love those intangibles when it comes to Mafe, and I think that's why he may sneak into the first round. And then at 5, I got George Karlaftis out of Purdue, and this is where we really see the cream of the crop of this edge rushing class, as I have 5 guys in the top 15. It's a good class, and it's actually a pretty deep class as well. And Karlaftis, man, he just, when it comes to the lack of length and the bend, it's just not nearly as good as the guys ahead of him. But I think this guy will be a very good football player. His skill set just translates to success in the NFL. It's just typically not one that's highly sought out, which is why we see him in mock drafts go at the tail end of the first round, or in some cases fall out of the first round altogether. And I think that that's a bit ludicrous, because at some point you just got to be like, this guy's a good football player. Give me a good football player. His freshman season, he had 55 pressures, 8 sacks. And then his sophomore year, he battled the shortened Big Ten season where they had like 5 or 6 games. But he also dealt with injury. He dealt with having the Rona. But he came back and recreated that freshman season magic, where this year 54 pressures and 5 sacks. He's very powerful. And I think the biggest question for him was, will you test out explosive? And yes, he did. 38 in the vert, 121 in the broad. With a 3-cone, I was like, maybe he's a bit more bendy than I give him credit for. But he is one of the strongest. I will say, I think he came in weighing 266. His playing weight's going to be closer to 275. And I think that's just what it is. And before y'all, like Trey Hendrickson, literally almost identical measurements. And I think I've seen also a comp of Justin Tuck, which I think that's actually a pretty good one too, where these just explosive guys, these penetrators. I think those are 2 very good comps. But I ended up going with Hendrickson since he's the more, probably the more recent one, as Justin Tuck, what hasn't been in the league for what feels like 10 years now. But Karlaftis, man, he's got a great motor. Like, and I love his mentality is like, win by any means. I don't care if it looks pretty. I don't care if it looks ugly and sloppy. I want to win. And I think that type of mentality, and probably where he's going to end up weighing in the NFL, is going to allow him to kick inside regularly if you want him to. I got him listed as a base 4-3 end, but if he ends up playing like the 5 tech in a 3-4 scheme, I think he could do that as well. Great motor, probably already mentioned that, but what can I say? I think his hands could be a bit more active against the run. As I was kind of saying this with Boye Mafe, man, rip, go herky-jerky on a guy that's trying to block you, throw an uppercut, do anything to just clean off your strike zone and be able to make a play on the ball carrier rather than trying to dictate where the ball carrier goes. So again, kind of a nitpick, but when you're kind of like taking these guys in the top 15, you kind of got to be nitpicky. What can I say? And at number 4, Travon Walker. The hype train, it's real. This guy's being talked about going first or second overall. Does he? I don't think so, but I think he sneaks into the top 10 relatively easy. Just beating Karlaftis by 1 spot on my big board for a good reason. The upside, it's immense. I mean, this guy's got speed and he's got power. That's the favorite phrase of Bro Schmo here. This guy. You know I like a guy when I say this guy. And let me tell you, this guy, speed and power. Just looking at 35.5-inch arms. The hands are huge. And he tested out at 272 with the 4.5 140. 35.5-inch vert. I think the most surprising number is he had a sub 7-second 3-cone. Did you know at the combine this year, only 5 receivers tested with sub 7-second 3-cones? That's crazy. That's ludicrous. That's wild. Now, when it comes to Travon Walker, he was mainly used as a rotation player. Actually, coming into the year, I think he had less than 300 snaps to his name. Guess what? Georgia, they recruit kind of hella good. And they like to keep their guys fresh. So I don't think it's that big of an indictment that he was really used as a rotation guy with sort of this pitch count, if you will. But he was very productive. 34 pressures, 5 sacks. And this cat, we know in Georgia, they preach, stop the run, defend the run, run, contain. I don't know if that's their slogan, but might as well be, because that's what they do. So we didn't really get to see truly the type of get off as he tested it out with there at Georgia. This cat, Mr. Travon Walker, his get off, it's hella good. Just is. It really is. He's explosive. But it's upside. At the end of the day, it's upside. He can stand. I mean, he's not technically sound. He needs to redefine a lot in his game. He's not very polished as a pass rusher. He doesn't have this lunch pail of pass rushing moves. That's not him yet. It's just not. If you're drafting this cat, that's why I have Rashawn Gary. It's kind of the perfect comp. He was the same guy coming out. And I think even if he doesn't become the most technically proficient guy in this class, or even if he doesn't redefine a lot to his game, that combination of size and speed, it's just a winning combination at the next level. It just is. That's why he's number 14 on my big board. And then at number 3, Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State. He's kind of become one of my favorite prospects in this class, just simply because of the off-season draft process has been wonderful. He had a great year. Mind you, he was a former Georgia transfer, went to JUCO, and then went to Florida State and had a hell of a year. 48 pressures, 14 sacks. That'd be good, yo. That be good. But he just came into the Senior Bowl and he just won. He was easily the best edge rusher there, and no one came close. Already having a build. My wife wishes I looked like Jermaine Johnson. I'll just say that, because there's not an ounce of fat on this guy's body. He's got tree trunk thighs and he's got freaking steel girders for arms. The guy looks good. He just is. Great full body strength. And probably how he wins is leverage and it's length. He's got 34-inch arms and he uses it quite well. He's got a pretty solid arsenal of pass rush moves. But probably we got to kind of nitpick, and he just sneaks into my top 10 on the big board, and we have to nitpick when it comes to. You remember when I talked with Arnold Ebiketie that a large percentage of his pressures and sacks came within 1 to 2 seconds of the snap? Jermaine Johnson is on the other side of that spectrum, where a large percentage of his pressures and his sacks came 3 to 4 seconds after the snap. You see how he wins? It's very grindy. He's more so very patient and willing to weasel out the quarterback out of the pocket and then make a move. He is this, I've used this term in the past, a late to the party, but life of the party type of guy. I use that. I'm not saying he's like a Dante Fowler type. I'm just saying that's kind of feels like what he is. But more so, he is someone who can win right off the snap and cause a lot of problems. I think that's where the stark difference is. That's why my comp, Gaines Adams. I had to go. I went looking. I saw that in NFL Mockable, I think, or Mock Draftable, you could go and look at where these guys measure up and test out, and what are some similar guys who tested out and measured out in the same way. Gaines Adams was one. So I went back and watched old Clemson tape of Gaines Adams because I remember him coming out and being taken by Tampa. And man, really a lot of how they won was very identical. It really was. I think the difference was Jermaine Johnson's much better in the run game than Gaines Adams. So where Jermaine Johnson, I think, can work on is after that initial first step, right off the bat, is not really, I would say, just keeping his strike zone clean. Instead of being like two bulls, two rams going at one another and just like in wrestling, you kind of see that where they hold up and they kind of like push one another back and forth. Instead of having that kind of be what you like to do, become more active, and really, instead of being a guy that waits for the quarterback to make his play out of the pocket, be the guy that forces the quarterback out of the pocket. So don't go so quick into that standstill with an opposing blocker. That goes back to being he's not as twitchy, but he has an NFL tool set. He really does. That's what puts him so high here on my board. I think he's going to be a very good football player for a very long time. You just gotta question, will he ever have that high end? Will he go to? Can he take his game to an elite level? And I think it really comes down to changing that mindset of, instead of taking these guys head on, being a bit more proactive as a pass rusher. But at the end of the day, man, Jermaine Johnson, a hell of a prospect. And then number 2, Kayvon Thibodeaux, one of my favorite prospects in the class. I feel like I've said that about every guy, but what can I say, man? I like these guys. I really do. KT, when it comes to just, he's got the elite physical and athletic skill set you want to see from a pass rusher. He has the holy trinity, you would say, of explosiveness, length, and bend. He has the Thanos gauntlet, all the stones when it comes to being this high tier elite pass rusher at the next level. Now, I want to go ahead and we'll talk about why my number 1 is my number 1 over KT, because I think the highest ceiling of any guy in this class, it's KT. But let's talk about some of the red flags for a moment and why he comes here at number 2 on this list. For one, people question, his effort. And I think that's unfair. I'm going to quickly put down that, because this guy has been an Iron Man when it comes to Oregon. You could only pull this guy off the field because of injury in that Fresno State game. That was the only time KT comes off the field. But I think there's a fair point to be made. I think he saw the third most double teams of any other edge rusher in this class. He quits. If he's double teamed, he's dead in the water. He just quits on the play. It is what it is. And we saw, I think the best case of that is in the Utah games, where essentially it was double team KT and run away from him. Take him out of the play by running as far away as you can. And you know what? It worked, and it worked pretty darn well. But let's not take anything away from KT because he has the best first step of anyone in this class. He has the best bend of anyone in this class. He's been highly productive. 47 pressures, 9 sacks this year. Keep in mind, he missed time because he was hurt this year. Last year, go back to the USC game. He had 12 pressures on Elijah Vera Tucker. The dude is just good. He's just good. Some people question his approach to the pass rush, but I think he's got a good mind. I think he has a good approach to the pass rush. It's just he gets a little too fancy because, well, to be fair, he could really do anything as a pass rusher. And it gets a little too fancy sometimes because, dude, you have the high-end traits. You could just win with those. And then it comes down to ego. People think this cat has an ego because he wants to make money off his name. And as a brand guy myself, I don't mind that. Go and make your money, boo-boo. I think it soured some people at the combine when he said he was going to perform all the drills, and he came out and I think he only did the bench and the 40-yard dash, and then chose to test out the rest of the drills at his pro day. And I think a lot of people didn't like that. It's like, be a man of your word. You said you were going to do this, and then you decided to go elsewhere. And I think that's big. That's more so on the agent being like, hey, let's just wait. Let's just wait and go ahead and do it at your pro day. It's a business decision. I'm not going to fault KT for a business decision. So he's number 3 on my big board in terms of potential. He's got more of that than anyone, not just in this edge rush class, but in this class in general. There's a reason why we talked about him as the best prospect coming into this year. And number 1, it's Aiden Hutchinson. We all probably knew this was coming. And in terms of when it comes to him and KT, yes, he has the higher ceiling. I think Aiden Hutchinson has the higher floor because he's just going to be a good football player. Like, his floor is very good. Coming into the year, a lot of people saw him as a fringe first rounder, and a lot of that came based on his 2019 tape, where he was 15 freaking pounds heavier. We saw him more as this edge setter. That was his game. Then he broke his leg in 2020, and then transformed his body. Like, Bruce Feldman was like the first guy on this, as he had Hutchinson make his freaks list based on how he tested out during the spring training. And I was just like, that doesn't seem like the player I saw on tape on 2019. And then as the 2021 season went on, he wasn't that player. He was someone who was dominant. I mean, 74 pressures, 14 sacks. And he's a locker room guy. He's a culture guy. He's someone you just want in your locker room, someone you just want on your team and on your roster. That's why he is the top prospect in this draft class, on top of the quarterback class being sus. But let's talk more about Aiden Hutchinson because he tested out hella well. The 3-cone was nuts. It wasn't what Bruce Feldman had clocked during the spring training. It was as I think he was clocked at a 6.54. But I'm gonna tell you, 6.73 is hella good, as we kind of talked about already. The short shuttle was pretty darn solid. The 36-inch vert was as expected. Yeah, there's a good reason why he made Bruce Feldman's freaks list. How he wins. It's one of my favorite ways on how an edge rusher wins. It's moving grown men against their will with violence. I like that. He is fluent. You remember when we were talking about Sam Williams earlier in this video, if you watched this video through, that Sam Williams, when he tries to rattle off counters and combos, it kind of feels like this step-by-step process. With Aiden Hutchinson, it's a heck of a lot more fluent. He's so strong. One of the best push-pull moves you'll ever see. When it comes to just his inside moves in general, it's probably the best in this class. The thing is, he does lean a lot on winning on the inside with this, with his pass rush moves. That's just the case. So you got to question, how many moves does he have? Can he employ on the outside, especially when he has sub 33-inch arms? You kind of wonder, can he win consistently on the outside? And I think he can, because his bend is kind of ridiculous. That 3-cone, kind of nuts. So yeah, I think he can win consistently on the outside. I think it's just about making that toolbox pass rush moves on the outside as impressive as his inside moves. But yeah, no, he's the top guy. Don't know what more I could say about him. He's number 1 on my big board. Spoiler alert. By the way, big board, what do you think? Should we do a top 200, top 300 big board? Because I'll release one before the draft. So yeah, be on the look for the other prospect rankings. Celebration. Let me know. Do you want a video tomorrow? We're gonna be live streaming later today. I'll probably ask later tonight if you're there for the live stream, if y'all want a video for tomorrow. Maybe I'll do another mock, maybe not. Maybe it'll be something different. But until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.